Bienvenue tous. Welcome to Business Morning here on France24. Let's give you a look now at the world's business press. The World Bank sees slower growth in China. This is the front page of the Hong Kong Standard. The institution lowered its 2008 growth forecast for mainland China from 10.8 to 9.6%. Still impressive, though, as it predicts Chinese exports will decline due to the global slowdown. Yet it thinks that domestic demand should remain high and that a modest slowdown could contribute to rebalancing China's economy. Next, Ryanair warns of what it calls, quote, perfect storm damage. The UK Financial Times reports that Europe's leading low-cost airline said yesterday its profits could fall by as much as 50% in the next financial year because of rising oil prices, tougher economic conditions and falling fare levels, the ingredients, they say, of what they're calling the perfect storm. Alstom unveils its new high-speed train built to reach speeds of up to, get this, 360 kilometres per hour. The French engineering giant, which has just started to sell its TGV train abroad, wants its new AGV, or AGV, I suppose, train to spearhead its export drive. The inauguration will be held in La Rochelle in western France, with, guess who, President Nicolas Sarkozy, no less, in attendance. I wonder if he bought a ticket. Anyway, now, Alstom's roll-out of the AGV, or AGV, train caps a remarkable turnaround in the fortunes of the French energy and transport firm. Just a few short years ago, the firm was on its deathbed, faced with heavy losses and a serious cash crunch. With more on its resurrection, I'm joined by our business editor, Douglas Herbert. Doug, I can recall working as a journalist in Liverpool when Alstom there closed. Alstom was finished.
Yeah.
What's been behind this spectacular rebirth?
It really was on its deathbed. That's not an exaggeration. When the current CEO, Patrick Crone, arrived on the scene back in 2003, this was a company that one business daily here said was literally knocking at hell's door. We had just had the 9/11 terrorist attacks in the U.S. We had had the Enron corporate scandal. This took a giant chunk out of its major U.S. market. It had too many businesses, diversified all over the place. What Crone did, he started by firing everyone. He fired about 80% of the staff. Kicked them all out overnight.
So he's a popular man then?
Hatchet man, really. And refocused the company on two major sectors, which is transport, the trains we were just talking about, and energy, which is mainly electricity generation, projects like that. Orders are now up 40% in the first 9 months. It has 16 billion euros in turnaround. It's
immense.
Yeah, it's one of the giants of the Paris Stock Exchange. We are talking. It's now a motor. I mean, it is a remarkable turnaround by any measure.
Okay. Any more about Alstom?
Well, sure. I mean, a little more about its recent business. It really can't seem to fill its order books fast enough. On the energy side, about 70% of its orders right now are coming from the Asian market, mainly India and China, where the demand has just been surging for energy.
So this talk of exporting its technology, it's very serious stuff.
Very serious, Mark. And it's doing it. It's just everywhere you look. On the transport side, trains.
And of course, they're involved in that line, I take it, from Buenos Aires to Cordoba and Rosario.
They're bringing
in Argentina.
the first high-speed train to Argentina. That's going to be a 700-kilometer link. It sold trains to Morocco. It's looking at a big deal with Algeria. Some people even say it might beat out arch rival Siemens in Germany on Siemens' home turf with an AGV order very soon. Let's stand by for that.
A French success story, Alstom. Doug, thank you very much. US President George W. Bush has presented a $3.1 trillion budget that widens the federal deficit to near record levels, some $410 billion. The plan includes a $145 billion economic stimulus package and some $70 billion to continue funding wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
The 2009 budget plan has landed into the US Senate. $3.1 trillion. That's how much money the Bush administration is proposing to spend over the next fiscal year. It's a budget with a heavy emphasis on national security. Over $515 billion is earmarked for the military, and another $70 billion for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
It's a budget that achieves some important objectives. One, it understands our top priority is to defend our country, so we fund our military, as well as fund the homeland security.
President Bush inherited a budget surplus when he came to power in 2001, but his tax cuts, his war on terror and a recession turned that surplus into red ink. The deficit stood at $162 billion in 2007, and it's expected to triple this year, hitting $410 billion. So to boost his economy, President Bush plans to freeze domestic spending.
This budget is one that keeps spending under control. It eliminates 151 wasteful or bloated programs, saving the taxpayers $18 billion.
Medical care will be cut by at least $200 billion. Low-income families will receive less help from their Medicaid program. Retirement and health insurance will also be axed. Meanwhile, Americans will pay less tax. As part of his economic stimulus plan, President Bush hopes the deficit will be erased by 2012.
Now, time for the regular look at business across the other side of the planet. We'll join our Beijing correspondent, lucky man, Henry Morton. China's biggest holiday coming up. Large numbers of people travelling around. The Chinese New Year brings good news for the air travel industry, despite the bad weather, Henry.
Yes, with Chinese New Year nearly upon us and the world's largest migration of people reaching its peak, some 200 million making use of the transport system this week, the government here has announced yet another bumper year for the air travel industry. 2007 seeing a 16% increase in passenger numbers to 185 million, with 20% of those venturing overseas. The numbers also giving impetus to China's air travel expansion program, with Beijing looking to buy 3,400 new passenger planes over the next 20 years. Well, we stay in China, and Anglo American, the world's second largest mining company, has signed an agreement with China Development Bank to work on natural resource projects together. China Development, the country's largest state-controlled bank, and Anglo plan to jointly identify and develop ventures in China and Africa. The agreement's continuing Beijing's push to invest more in natural resource projects, and comes a week after China Development funded the majority of Aluminium Corporation of China's purchase of a $14 billion stake in Rio Tinto. We end in South Korea, where consumer groups have been left unimpressed by the incoming government's plan to cut telecommunication fees. It had been hoped that companies would be forced to trim as much as 20% off of service fees, but the President-elect's policy committee has said they will now leave the cuts in the hands of the phone companies. Those then the stories making the business news here in Asia Today. I'll see you again at the same time tomorrow.
Henry Morton in Beijing, which is clearly not suffering from the bad weather like other parts of China, which have been really badly affected. Now then, let's close this edition with a look at the stock markets, what we can see so far. Let's show you some figures here. There you go. This is the situation in the USA at the time of closure. The Dow, the Nasdaq and the S&P, all with red triangles pointing downwards. And let's take a look at the latest from the Nikkei, which is rather closer to where Henry Morton is based, in Tokyo there. As you see, a further drop there. Those are the main business stories. You're watching France 24-EN. Stay with us.